This is a story that may seem too strange to be true. Maybe it's best for you to decide if it is fact or fiction, or maybe it is someplace in between. You see, the events of this particular day could be memories of someone you know, or perhaps just fading dreams we never can quite recall. The beginning of our story takes place in a time without men, or their language and tall buildings. We find a huge male lion on a hot savanna. He was looking to quench his thirst. A beast with a mane of gold and red hairs sprouting from his head. He stood majestically on a narrow path. The trail approaches one of the more remote watering holes, less visited by most, and for good reason. Often it's quite dangerous as other predators hunt here frequently. It is said the other animals of the savannah gave him the name Joshua when he was just a cub. They told him it means king with hope. Joshua was known to say he didn't feel much like a king at all, and he often wondered if he would ever have hope. The king of beasts paused a moment and stood there, just letting the early morning sun warm his face. Yes, Joshua the lion was young for a king. Young indeed, but he is of pure heart, battle-hardened and tested as well. He continued towards the water's edge, cautiously and ever silent. Always alert, he watched for dangers or unsuspecting prey, the cat's eyes and ears always straining. At the water's edge, and convinced of his safety, he began to drink, lapping greedily from the cool water. That's when he noticed a fish swimming effortlessly in and out of the current. She was small, with bright orange and white markings on her body. Long trailing fins followed behind her as she went. Her scales glistened beneath the water like a diamond by firelight. Her name is Koi, and translated into English, Koi simply means the valley. He watched her a moment. It was like a dream when time seems distorted and slow. Soon he had forgotten everything around him. Koi seemed to move in that same graceful motion. She had a way about her the beast did not have words for. Koi was not the only one being watched, because she felt the gaze of a hunter, even through the water's surface. Koi returned his look, mocking him. She had noticed the lion's presence immediately. Even still, it would have been too late for her had he wanted a meal. He could have easily taken Koi, but only sat looking with his head slightly tilted to one side and his jaw slack enough for his mouth to hang open slightly as he somewhat perplexed at his attraction to her. Then at that moment it dawned on her. She was not afraid of him, not as one might expect her to be. What's going on, the tiny koi fish thought to herself. In fact, looking up through the water and beyond the surface, she was insatiably curious, even drawn to him, and she wanted to know more about him. His face and body, they're so big compared to her. She especially noticed the many scars on him. Koi wondered what he had been through. She could not help it, she was so curious. After all, who hunts lions, or what had happened to injure him? It would appear he has endured a great ordeal. Not far away, the activity at the watering hole did draw attention. After all, nothing goes unnoticed in the jungle. From a distance, a sharp eye would detect the movement and rustling of branches. It was just on either side of the trail Joshua had followed. Something sinister and dark was interested in the lion, and now Koi as well. Both of them were in real danger. The pack of hyena that stalked Hausa had found them. They watched from a distance, staying hidden. The leader of the hyena pack barked his commands as he stared in the direction of the watering hole. Now they had bait. They would attack them when the cat next returned, knowing he would be distracted. Hyena, mischievous, dog-like creatures. They are the natural enemy of the lion. This pack had hunted and tormented the lion a long time, most of his life. They always waited for just the right time to take him, almost toying with him. The hyena has a large mouth with tiny ears. So like most with this makeup, they say much, hear little, and understand even less. These creatures are known for having a unique and almost taunting laugh. Still, no hyena is a match for the king of beasts. Wisely, they kept their distance, for now. A whole pack, on the other hand, is a difficult thing to manage, even for the best of lions. Therefore, this pack certainly bears watching. Again, the little fish wondered to herself and then politely asked, "Great king, please tell me, what has happened to you? Who would hunt you, or who dared to fight you? You are the king of beasts, after all." "Are you not?" said Koi, puffing up her chest as if to be a lion. "Peace! Is it not better than war?" Hausa said, "Brave and also annoying little fish, why do you pester me?" said the lion. "After all, is it your business or mine?" Koi looked puzzled. She thought a moment, but before she could say anything, the lion spoke. "Maybe I should make you my next meal? Simply for the quiet, yes?" Koi held her ground, but again remained silent as if awaiting the answer, but in truth too scared to move. "I would eat you indeed," he said gruffly. Sensing fear looming over her, he added, "Except you are hardly a meal." "Not worth the trouble, I think," the lion said, only this time settling back and noticeably fighting back a smile. Without much hesitation, she looked up and said earnestly, "I want to know what troubles you, I suppose," she said. Her voice seemed to trail off, as though she were thinking deeply. Koi could easily sense the goodness in his heart. She did this with many other things and creatures. Koi has an unusual talent for sensing things others didn't. He could not say why, but her words had found their mark. Maybe no one had taken interest in him before. Not like that. They either feared him or ended up food. Sometimes both. Whatever the reason, he felt compelled to. Reluctantly, he spoke and told his tale. Because you see, in that moment he realized he needed someone. So answer her he did. Though it was slow and softly, almost in a whisper at first, the king decided to tell her of his past. As he gained confidence, a serious note entered his voice and piercing stare from his eyes. Joshua said in a rumble, "I am the only one, Koi," his voice failing him. "I am the only one left of my whole pride," he said. Everyone else was eventually taken by the hyena. I was young then, too small to... His ears drooped. "It didn't take long, and they had taken the whole pride," he said with a lump in his throat. "I was so small and young, no match for them. So they let me live each time they came. I remember them laughing. They were always laughing." Seemingly defeated, the king sat as exposed and vulnerable as a newborn cub. Koi, unsure if she'd pushed too far with him, didn't know quite what to say. The lion recalled the story of the hyena coming to the jungle and how he witnessed the taking of his family, all of them. One by one they took them all while he watched, helplessly afraid until he was all that was left. Each day he moved quietly and went out of his way to avoid the pack. Oftentimes hearing the taunting laugh or snap of branches in the distance, he knew if he were found they would take him too. As the story ended, the king met the eyes of the little fish, who listened intently. Feeling his sorrow, she began to understand. He could not explain why, but he was drawn to her. When their eyes finally met, the most electric energy could be felt in the air. "We will take them both," said the leader of the hyena pack, in a low-pitched voice. "We will wait until the morning when the big cat is sure to return. Then we will take them by surprise," barked the leader. The trap was in motion. The next day, when the king returned to the water, all was strangely still. The birds did not sing. Even the breeze seemed to sleep as the branches of all the trees were still. The big cat flared his nostrils and listened closely, sensing something was amiss. He detected no danger, so continued on towards Koi and the watering hole. Just as he arrived, Koi broke the surface of the water with a big smile, happy to welcome Hausa. Before she could say anything to the lion, movement drew her attention. She saw the leader of the hyena pack. Yellow teeth, long and sharp. He came with his soldiers on his left and right. All of them moved with purpose in order to ready for the ambush. Now, all showing their teeth and drooling with anticipation, it was as if they were happy and grinning. They all moved quickly to prevent Hausa's escape or retreat. They had him. Hausa, with his back to the water and surrounded, he had no place to go. The great cat was caught off guard, having seen them cruelly take the rest of the lions in his pride. Hausa was paralyzed with fear. His mind a blur, he could not bring his limbs to action. Too frightened to even move, much less fight or run, he crouched, frozen with fear. He had seen this ending far too many times. His body low in submission, along with his heart, Joshua had lost the will to fight. The lion's legs trembled and failed under him. His body sank closer to the ground. That very moment, Koi shouted a warning. Just as two of the hyena soldiers moved in behind her, both of them anxiously ready to attack. The crestfallen lion now knew they intended to take Koi as well. All seemed lost. Sorrow and fear gripped him. Joshua could not help but think her taking was all his fault. It is often told, the Creator, seeing this injustice, stepped in, giving an unlikely pair a helping hand and gentle nudge. He poured his favor freely onto the unlikely pair. Their time had come. With his favor gifted, a crown of kings was left on the noble lion's head. As ember before a flame, Joshua's spirit began to erupt deep inside him. Joshua, youngest of the pride, was king. Still he was totally alone, and facing all odds, he was still king. His heart filled with fire and fury, the cat's body coiled and tightened like a spring. "You will not take her," said the thundering heart of a beast. He was no longer gripped by fear, he demanded war. His mind was pinpoint focused on the ending the reign of the hyena pack. His heart simply would not give up. Like the loud crack of a bullwhip, Joshua unleashed the torrent with a deep and savage roar that shook the ground. As the story goes, it could be felt all across the jungle plain. A roar announcing the king. Nothing in the jungle dared move or make a sound. The king had spoken. Koi never knew the danger behind her when she dove for the depths, barely escaping the clack of would-be captors' teeth just behind her. Fearing she would see him taken by the snarling hyenas, she could not watch. The king did not see her, as he otherwise would not be denied. Pack or not, they will not take her, his inner voice vowed again. That is all he knew, and what the rest would come to see. The king exploded into a white-hot fury of tooth and claw. One by one, the hyena fell to Hausa. He did not stop until he had taken them all that day. He made sure all the jungle plain bared witness. With Hausa having savagely taken the last hyena, the whole pack was now gone. A heavy weight lifted, the waterhole and jungle plain returned to a relative peace. With his fur and teeth stained crimson and clumped together with what was left his campaign, Joshua stood looking. Almost in a daze, Beast began to cry as he realized Koi was not there. The king of beasts regained his senses and looked for her. Pacing frantically, back and forth along the water's edge, he searched for the annoying little fish. Searching for any sign of her, his very heart called her name. He found only his reflection looking back. He longed for the peace he found in her friendship. He could not stop the tears, thinking she had been taken. Later, Koi returned to the waterhole, looking desperately for her king. All she found were signs of his fury. All she could do was sob, figuring they had eventually taken him. She cried, lost in grief. They say, the Creator favors the brave. Joshua and Koi certainly put that to the test on that day. It was on that very night the impossible happened. Because once again, seeing their struggles and hearing their cries for help, the Creator showed his favor. The king of the jungle and a tiny koi fish, both with broken hearts, found themselves without the other. Yet at the exact same time, both looked to the Creator. They pleaded with him, weeping one for the other, hoping for him to ease the pain of loss in their hearts as they fell asleep. The big cat had all but given up hope of finding her again. Just as Koi had given up on finding Joshua as well. But with hope faded, they had the Creator's favor. The next morning, as the sun began to rise, a blue sky was clear and bright, a day full of promise. The birds sang with what seemed like enthusiasm. The leaves and branches danced gently in tune with the wind. Joshua, his friends called him Josh, sprang from his bed and rubbed his eyes. Blinking in bewilderment, he tried to shake off a vivid dream that seemed more than real. At that very moment, not far away, Valentina, she preferred to be called Valley for short, wrinkled her brow and cocked her lips awkwardly as she tried to remember the dream she had that night. She wondered at the fading memory of being a fish. As she was stretching and struggling to shake off the cobwebs, Valentina smiled broadly at the vague recollection of a rather captivating lion. His name was on the tip of her tongue, yet just beyond words, as his memory faded completely. Later the same day, from across a large sportsman's arena full of the rich smells and sounds of both men and beasts of all sorts, Josh looked up from his work, only to meet the gaze of the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Both of them caught smiling, both unable to take their eyes off the other. The energy was like static electricity popping in the air. They could not shake the feeling they had met. Maybe in a past life, maybe in a dream. A dream not unlike the one they both had that very night. One thing is sure. Exactly a year to the day after they were married, Josh and Valley gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Josh liked Valley's suggestion and quickly agreed, so they named her Hope.